phenomenal members of the helping professionals who are going to kind of share their thoughts, their wisdom around women's mental health. First, we have Shari H. James, who is a PhD. She's also a PMHC. She's a licensed psychologist and certified perinatal mental health professional. With over 15 years of experience, her psychotherapy practice focuses on reproductive and maternal mental health. So we'll find out what that all means very shortly. And next we have Dr. Rebecca Estrada, who is also a licensed psychologist here at UCF, and she works in CAPS. And she has been working in the mental health field for over 10 years. Her specialties include psychological assessment, working with students on the autism spectrum, and working with students with chronic health issues. She's also a new mother herself. And so I think that there's some kind of a theme going on here. And so since there's a theme going on here, let me just welcome in both of my guests today. Dr. Shari and Dr. Rebecca, can you all come on camera and let us see you?
Hi.
Hi. Hi. How are you all doing today?
Good. Good to be here. Thanks for having us.
I'm glad to have you. I'm really glad to have you. Can each of you kind of just give me a thought of how you're doing today, and then maybe share a little bit about what you do and what's important in this messaging today to get out to the women who are watching the podcast, men too.
Yeah, absolutely. I can go first. As Dr. B said, my name is Shari James. I'm a licensed psychologist. And the area in which I specialize in now within the last few years is reproductive and perinatal mental health. So today, just hoping to talk a little bit about some of the issues and challenges that a lot of moms face, and how too that's heightened in what we have right now, which is a pandemic. So talking a little bit about that and how women and men and their partners, because they experience it too, how they can find ways to cope, during this very, very challenging time. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Dr. Estrada.
Hi, it's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I just want to echo what Shari was saying, that it is a very unique experience that we're having right now, living through the pandemic. And so I think maybe the takeaway today is just to kind of have a little more information about some of the things that new moms are experiencing, or moms in general, and also even talking about some of the very unique challenges that women have just with mental health in general.
Mental health in general. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So you're a new mom.
I am, yes.
And can you tell us a little about the baby and
she is 10 months old as of yesterday. So she is just learning to stand by herself, and she's like crawling. So she's moving a lot. I work from home, so I'm working full time with her here with me all the time. So that's been an adventure for sure. But she, it's just really cool to see her like learn and grow. And my like nerdy psychology brain is just eating all of this up. So it's
okay, great. And so it kind of ties in with some of your understanding of prenatal birth and maternity, maternity, and all those other things, right? I'm getting all tripped up with my words here. So, Dr. James, can you tell me a little bit about what it is that you do as a profession and how you reach out to the women that come into your office?
Sure. So I have a private practice in the area, and a lot of the work that I do fall within that umbrella of reproductive and maternal mental health. So I work with clients who may be struggling to conceive. So, couples come in, to work through that. Or I may have a woman who wants the space to really process that journey that they're on. So from that through pregnancy and any emotional challenges that women may feel during that period, through the postpartum period. So anything in that like prenatal period, conception through postpartum, as well as preconception. Those are the areas that I focus with. And then within that, of course, there are various challenges that one can experience, whether it's a pregnancy loss. So I do work with women and couples who have had like a miscarriage or a stillbirth. And then people who've had, traumatic births. That is something that a lot of women experience along with their partners, that, having an emergency C-section, or, having a situation where, they are going into preterm labor and their child is in the NICU. So all of the challenges and emotions that come about through those experiences, I work with couples to help navigate through that. And I was trying to see what else you had asked me there.
So I have a question in regards to postpartum.
Yes.
And so the way I heard you say it just now, it doesn't seem to reflect how I hear it often so you hear about a woman going through postpartum and you're thinking all of a sudden that she's having struggles with not the pregnancy, but, things that are going on with her and she's depressed or whatever have you. And then what I heard you say just now does not sound like that at all. It sounds like there's care that's taken postpartum that is definitely different than how we are kind of using that term, I guess, in some regards. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. I see you're shaking your head, yes. So tell me.
Yeah, well, I can flesh that out a little bit too. And I think as a society, we kind of portray like the postpartum period to be one of, someone has had a child and they're in cloud 1,000 and they're happy and joyful and everything is great. And, the thing about that, it's because that perception is out there in society. If there's a woman, for example, who is struggling, they feel as though they can't voice their struggle because then they will be criticized, or they will feel that they have to meet that expectation that society places on them that, oh, you just had a child, you should be happy. When that isn't the case for a lot of people. In fact, just in terms of numbers, the amount of women who experience like postpartum depression or anxiety or OCD, because it's not just depression. I think before, postpartum depression was like a catch-all for all of the emotional challenges that a woman would experience, but it can be postpartum anxiety, OCD, PTSD, if there was a birth trauma. But I think it's just important to kind of flush that out. It can look in a lot of different ways, right?
Yes.
And in terms of percentages, about 20%, 1 in 5 women experience some emotional, challenge during the postpartum period, which is a big number. Yeah. 1 in 5 women. And it's, sad to say that, a lot of work still needs to be done so those women can be caught and get treated. Because a lot of women are just like falling through the tracks. Either they're not aware that they're having these challenges, or, they haven't heard about it before and maybe a little bit blindsided that they're feeling this way and may not know where to get treatment. I mean, there's a lot of those things that are occurring. Okay. And as a result, women are just not getting the treatment that they need.
Right. So Dr. Estrada, why is there a stigma attached to it?
I think it's a lot to do with, there's a lot of factors contributing to that, right? So we used to kind of, years ago, when we heard about postpartum depression, it was just the horror stories, right? About women in the media who were doing things to their children as a result of the depression. But we didn't hear about, the other people who were experiencing this who didn't do those violent acts. So I think also there's that piece and the stigma of, kind of like Shari was mentioning, that there's this idea that you should be on like cloud 1,000 after your child is born. And there's such a heavy sense of guilt and shame if you're not in that place. And I think that kind of prevents a lot of people from coming forward and talking about their experience for fear of judgment of other people.
So there are times when I hear women saying, oh, I just love being pregnant. I mean, everything about being pregnant was just phenomenal for me, right? Then I hear other women saying, oh, no, it's a means to an end, but I do not really enjoy being pregnant. But so those women who enjoy pregnancy that way, who say, you know what, I just love being pregnant, do they experience some type of postpartum in some regards? And in terms of now that they've had the baby, now they have to care for the baby, but you know, it's not that euphoric feeling they were getting while they were pregnant. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that is very possible, because not to say that that person will indeed, you know, suffer and have challenges emotionally, but you know, someone who is enjoying their pregnancy, and yes, they will mention it. Oh, I love it. I just love being pregnant. I could do this 10 million times. Even that person, you know, can have postpartum depression or OCD, or, you know, because it's not just one, you know, cause that will lead to this. It could be hormonal, it could be environmental, it can be like a previous history. If that woman, yes, while she had a sense of joy during pregnancy, if she had a history of anxiety and depression, you know, that puts her a little bit at risk for, you know, having some issues during that postpartum period. If she had a family member as well, it also kind of raises the risk for her. Not to say that she will get, you know, postpartum depression or anxiety, but, you know, you have to monitor, even if she's saying that she's happy, and is she really happy, or you know, is this something that she feels she has to say because she's pregnant and she's trying to kind of meet these like societal norms?
Yeah. So there's a question in regards to mental health, right? There is a situation I know of where a woman had a child. She wasn't happy that she was having the child. The relationship that she was in kind of fell by the wayside, and there was not that kind of a contact. And so she ended up maybe kind of hating being pregnant, right? And so after the baby was born, because of the feelings that they had, overcompensated, because they didn't want the kid to feel that they weren't wanted. Can you talk about that, and what's happening there in terms of how that the person is experiencing that pregnancy?
So you were referring to the couple kind of overcompensating with regards to how they parented that child, or their relationship?
The person became a single mother.
The person, okay.
The father was out of the context, pregnant, unmarried, shame that may come with that, and not wanting the baby, but having the baby anyway, because they had other reasons for having the baby, right? They weren't going to have an abortion. They weren't going to do this, they're going to do that. But they, in a sense, were carrying the baby for 9 months, but were not happy about it. And then after the baby was born, there's this overcompensation because they feel guilty that they had the child, that they felt that way about the child.
Well, I think in a situation like that, if that person were to walk through my door, definitely kind of creating the space for her to speak to like what's currently going on in her life. You know, I would want to hear a little bit about, you know, how she, you know, perceives her child and that connection and bond, like what that looks like, you know, specifically on a day-to-day basis. So in that situation, for me, it would be wanting to kind of gather more information, kind of see where she's coming from. Also wanting to assess, you know, what does her support system, you know, look like? So her partner isn't in the picture anymore. Yeah. Does she have support around her? Because it's hard being a single parent. You know, does she have a mom or an uncle or a sister or something? Right. So I would want to make sure that social circle for her is pretty solid and strong. What about
for the child, though? Is there damage that could be done to the child when the person becomes a mama bear or whatever have you because of overcompensation?
Absolutely. And that's why it's important that that person and that mom is making sure that she's addressing everything that, you know, she hasn't had the space to really resolve within herself. Because yes, that could come through in her parenting. That will impact that child and that relationship with that child. That will impact the child's development as well. So I think in situations like that, very important for the mom to really address some of those unresolved, issues. So it's not transferred onto the child.
Right. So what you're sharing though is that with pregnancy comes a lot of things that come up for people that they need to address, that they need to deal with.
Absolutely.
People think that, I can get pregnant and have these kids and just move on about our business. And in many communities, they have to, because they don't either trust mental health services, or they don't go into, they don't have insurance or whatever have you, to kind of have those types of things come into play. So then they're doing it on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why access is so important. And there isn't a lot of barriers to services and care. I know that persists and exists, right? But I think it's important for, mental health providers to be able to be in communities where there isn't much access, so that their women, can kind of get the support that they need, to help them through this. So
excellent. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Estrada, you want to weigh in there anywhere? Any? I saw you nodding your head a couple of times. So I'm wondering, was there anything that came up for you?
I was just kind of thinking about the implications on the child, just like you said, and a lot of times we'll see too, if the parent has like a mama bear mentality, that the child then struggles with kind of developing their own sense of autonomy and like trusting their own self to grow and explore, and so that's kind of where we look at attachment theory sometimes in therapy. So I think that's one way to kind of view it, is like, how is the child, even if they do have, the parent has like a mama bear mentality, like how is the attachment style developing? And so we have, different ways that can play out.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So what do you love about your careers?
That's a great question.
That's a good question.
That's a hard one, but it's a good one.
I'm a counselor, so I know what I'm doing.
Right. I mean, I think it's just kind of, it's hard to articulate, really. I feel like I ask people this and I just, it's hard to answer. I work with college students. I mean, I think that like watching, part of what I mentioned earlier about my own daughter was like watching her grow and develop. I really kind of love that, but also like working with my college students and seeing their kind of adult developmental process, and also helping them to kind of like identify wounds with themselves and like heal. I think watching someone heal is such a beautiful process. And so if I can be like any part of that process, it really kind of like gives me great joy to see that. And I really am like a very, I think my brain is very like strategic in the way like I think. And so kind of helping people figure out the root of the issue is really an energizing process for me.
Okay, excellent. Dr. James, what about you?
In terms of what I love, my passion with regards to this field, well, prior to this work, I actually worked at CAPS and I was there for 11 years. So, college students was, my thing and my interest and my passion, and just loved, kind of being part of that journey with them and seeing them grow and figure out who they are as people. I loved and really kind of sunk into that work. Now I am far removed, from the college age population. I work mostly with moms and partners and couples. And I think for me, once I, had my own, kids and, everyone around me were having kids, and just kind of noticing and being aware too of, that yes, this is joyous, but this is hard too. This is very, very like challenging. And it's not voiced as much, and knowing that people are struggling in silence. So wanting to really provide that space where people could come and really sort through everything that they are dealing with during this, huge transition in their life, becoming a parent
Yeah.
is huge. So, just being able to walk that journey with, my clients and kind of helping them kind of gain that insight and, moving through, this process with them. So yeah, it's kind of great to be in the mix of that.
Yeah, nice. So when you were thinking about your career options, maybe growing up, and I don't know when you had this deciding factor, like, when you were going to go to college and what you wanted to do and what you wanted to be, was this in the game plan, or did this something that you fall into?
Let's see. I would say, to be honest, so when I started college, I actually was a student athlete. I was an athlete growing up. So I was a swimmer. I'm from the islands. So, when I started college, to be honest, I had no clue what I wanted to do. I actually thought I was going to be maybe like an art historian or something of that like nature, because I was always a creative person. And it was only really through, and this is the experience that I could really like pin, which kind of led me down this path, is that I had a roommate in college she was majoring in psychology. And it was really through our discussions that really like piqued my interest, because back home, being from the Caribbean, no one really talks about going to therapy or psychology.
Right, right.
It's very taboo, right? No one talks about that.
Yeah.
So that interest was only peaked, coming to the US. And it was really through that roommate and having conversations with her and some of the coursework that she took. It's like, oh, well, let me try this out and see how it, fits for me. And then I just really just like stuck at that point.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
So you were undeclared coming in, and then you kind of.
I was undeclared.
Wow.
Yes.
How about you, Dr. Estrada?
Psychology has always been my first love. I think I had I came from a very disadvantaged background, and so it was always very interesting to me to see how people can go through different experiences and like turn out different ways and make different choices. And so I was really interested in like the concept of resilience. And so I took a psych class in high school, and I never looked back, and that's all I've ever wanted to do.
Oh, wow.
Going into college. So
wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. So did you know maybe in high school that you would be doing the work that you're doing, or did you have some other concept of what you thought psychology would do?
I had like a broad concept of like I'd want to do therapy, but I never really thought about the like specific, like working at a college counseling center. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right.
And then like working in my specialty areas with students on the autism spectrum, that only came into my like interest area when I was in my doctoral program, and my younger brother was diagnosed with autism. And so that's kind of been the passion there. And then also like chronic health became a passion probably in the last 10 years. So things have kind of developed over time.
So there are a lot of women who are resistant to seeking any type of counseling services for whatever reasons. What's your advertising pitch? What are the things that you do to try to encourage women to seek out mental health?
I think for CAPS, I kind of have it easy, right? Because we don't really have to like advertise, or people kind of come to us. But I think when I have clients who are generally like, well, I have this friend who's hesitant about coming to therapy. And my suggestion there is just try it out. I kind of like to talk to them about the stigma associated with therapy. And I think everyone kind of sees it as like, well, I'm not in a crisis. I'm not crazy. I don't need to go to therapy. Yeah. But just kind of pointing out, like, people come to talk to me about stress and like relationships. And so you don't even have to be in a bad place to come and have a conversation.
Yeah. How do you share that message, right? Because that's the thing that most people don't necessarily understand. It's like, if I'm coming there, my understanding of it is what the movies say. The movies say that we have the crazy uncle and the aunt who are back in the back room, and, or the therapist who asks the most benign questions. so why would I go there and be a part of that experience? So I appreciate that. What's your sales pitch, Dr. James?
So, well, I'm not a CAPS where the clients, just come, to my office. But I am, connected to, several, offices of OBGYN, like birth centers, places in the community, where, a lot of providers are like aware of me. So, if like a mom is, pregnant or during her postpartum period and she's, going to like a provider, someone that she's known for a while and she's struggling, like that provider is already aware, of me. So kind of like through that, avenue, is how, clients can come through. But even with, emails and a phone call, sometimes you get clients that, okay, yeah, I want to do this, but I'm a little wary, I'm not sure. So really, like as, Rebecca was saying, just kind of letting them know that, this, is something that a lot of people, do, and normalizing the whole process is not as scary, as they think that it may be, or anxiety provoking. So really kind of making sure that they understand that, they're going to be fine. They're going to be okay. This is a place, a safe place that we're creating, that we'll create for you, to talk through, anything you feel that's on your mind that you want to sort through. So kind of putting people at ease about it.
So you say you work with couples. So what is that like?
See, couples work. It is. So the majority of the clients that I see are individual one-on-one. So I do have a few couples on my caseload. And in terms of what that is like, it really kind of depends on what they're bringing into the room and they want to work through. A lot of times it's communication, just not on the same page with each other. And, for them, typically when couples kind of come into, that environment or in the room, it helps for them to kind of get things out that they can't otherwise in their own environment.
Okay.
So, being able to have this dedicated space and time to do that, is really, beneficial for them. And to knowing that this is a space where they can bring everything out onto the table.
Right.
The good, the bad, the ugly, just put it all out and let's kind of sort through and work through it.
Okay. So a woman comes to you and has had a bad experience growing up, had, poor parenting, and is afraid that they're going to maybe have those same types of, experiences with their own child. What are some of the tips or things that you work with them to help them see that they're their own individual in terms of moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I definitely come into contact with a lot of women who are pregnant or they have a young child and they're still working through some issues, with a parent. It may be with a mom, for example, where there is either the mom isn't a part of their lives anymore, or it's a very disconnected relationship, and they're fearful of repeating that same pattern with how their mom parented them with their own child. So, that is a theme that I often see in therapy,
Okay.
That I work out with clients, and is really talking about and having them have a sense of kind of understanding and insight into how they were parented, as a child, because for some of them that is unresolved. Like they didn't have the space to really explore that. In fact, it was something that has been an issue, but has only been heightened since they've had their own child, right? So now they're in a situation where all that is bubbling to the surface. So we spend a considerable amount of time like processing that piece.
Okay.
In terms of, their relationship, with their mom, You know, what was that like? What were some of the emotions, you know, that came up for you, you know, as a child, you know, while you were being parented, you know? So we really kind of work through that. For some of the clients, they're working through on getting to a point of forgiveness of that parent.
Right.
So they could, you know, while they did not forget, you know, some of the things that occurred in their childhood, they want to move to a place of forgiveness so they can kind of move past. Right. So some of the work is working towards that, like forgiveness of that parent so they can move on.
So do you find that they are, you know, their parenting of their child is affected by that, or are they just still learning about themselves through the process?
They're still learning about themselves, not to say that their parenting is now affecting their own child, but, you know, a lot of these things are probably coming up in their awareness that they haven't thought about in probably years until they've had their own child. And the real drive for them and for these clients is making sure that they don't repeat the same pattern. You know, so their parenting could be completely different. They're not doing the same things or engaging in the same behaviors, but they want to make sure that they continue to be on that track and they don't revert to a pattern where.
Because I know, I mean, as a father, I know that there are times I'm like, oh, my father used to say that to me. Oh, my mother used to say that to me. And so, you know, so you can't escape it, you know.
You can't,
There's no manual on how to be a parent, but you do have those memories.
Yeah, and it's something that you're always coming face to face with, right? And you're trying so much within yourself not to do those things. But I think the important thing is having that awareness, right? Because that's the piece that with their parent, they didn't have, because nothing was ever different, nothing ever changed. So with them being aware, they can now make that choice that, okay, I am a different person. I am going to respond differently to my child, you know, so.
So one last question that I probably have more too, but one last question when it comes to a parenting of a child. Sometimes because of circumstances, right, you have an aunt or a grandmother who ends up raising a child of a sibling or their own child, right? Do they come to your counseling services? And if they do, what are some of the things that they bring to that counseling relationship? What are their needs?
So let's see. I mean, I have had situations where like a client wanted her mom in the session because she had a like pivotal role kind of like in the household. But the client was still raising, you know, the child, but her mom did have like a pivotal role in terms of caregiving. So, you know, she wanted to be there so I can kind of get like her perspective on things and like, you know, some insight into, you know, what she's kind of seeing in the dynamic at home. But it's not so much of a common occurrence where I see that
not a common occurrence, but is it something that you would recommend to people like that? I can imagine that sometimes the reason why you're raising that child is because of some traumatic situation that had occurred. So in your eyes, perhaps they're not necessarily seeking counseling the way that they probably should or might.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not seeing, and maybe they are, right? And I hope, you know, there's situations where, you know, they are able to, you know, have access to therapy. It's just for me, like I am not seeing like a lot of those, you know, specific situations.
Understood. Thank you for that. Dr. Estrada, the students that come to you, the female students that come to you at UCF, what are some of the major concerns that they bring and how does CAPS support them or help them work through those types of issues?
A lot of things that we see are depression, anxiety. We'll see a lot of relationship issues. And I think in stress management, the issues are very similar for across the genders, I think. We do see more female clients than male identified clients at CAPS. But I think in general, it really is, the treatment's very specific to each client. And so depending on what they're coming in for, some of the things that we may work on, in terms of like relationships, we have a lot of treatment options for relationship issues. We have groups and workshops, but really kind of maybe helping them identify like healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships. Also working through some of the attachment trauma that they've had growing up, in order to have healthier relationships. The depression and anxiety, a lot of that too is working interpersonally, because it does impact like self-esteem and self-concept and things like that. So we help to find them coping mechanisms for the symptoms, and then we kind of work on developing that self-concept to a more healthy ideal. We also have a lot of like body image concerns, right, with our female clients and male too. And then, so certain things we have in place there. We have like an eating management team. So we work with student health to kind of get that in healthy levels, but just kind of an overall, we have a body wellness group that kind of focuses on just kind of like the body image. And so it really, there's a lot of different options there, and it really kind of definitely depends on the therapist and their style of working and the client and their presenting issues.
Nice. So has the transgender community, individuals from that community, found their way to CAPS, and how has that affected your style of counseling?
Absolutely. I think in the past 10 years or so, maybe 5 years, we've really kind of, our transgender services have really flourished. And so we have a trans care team. And so students can come, a lot of times they're in the process of transitioning, or just maybe they kind of are at the forefront of it and not really sure where to go and how to transition. A lot of times they're wanting to work through that gender dysphoria. And then, so, sorry, the schedule just popped up. And so, yeah, we definitely have a lot of options. We do a lot of trainings to be on the forefront of the research in that area of like different interventions that might be the most helpful. We have make sure to allow them to use their pronouns. We work very hard to avoid calling them by their dead names. We also have our trans and gender diverse empowerment groups. They're very popular groups, and we are providing HRT letters. So we are continuing to work on strengthening our skills in that area, and we definitely make every effort to be very inclusive.
So when you say that you try to make sure you use their pronouns, talk about the importance of that.
Oh, it's absolutely important. So I think there's been a lot of change in the language around that, even going from like, what is your preferred pronoun to what is your pronoun? And so just being mindful of asking everyone who comes into our center, what is the pronoun? What is your pronoun? And so that way, on our notes and on our paperwork, we can correctly document this is what this person would like to be referred to. It gives them like a sense of agency. And I think it's just a matter of respect to it's, I think when we don't use the correct pronoun, it really is very diminishing.
So I get that part. So I do understand that it's respectful and utilizing it in that manner. But is it something that everybody needs to be a part of, or can you still respect some person and respect their usage of the pronoun and still maybe yourself not use the pronoun?
So what do you mean by maybe yourself not use the pronoun?
So there are people who are like, well, I respect you and I understand your use of pronoun. If you want me to call you they or there or he, her, she, him, whatever those words are, that help to either help the person feel that they are being affirmed. But does that mean that the counselor has to be doing the same thing? Is that your suggestion, that the counselor is also doing that? Does that play into that affirmation?
I think it creates a safe space for it.
Okay.
So, for instance, like in my groups are telehealth. On my name, I'll put often my own pronouns, so she, her, hers, and then that helps other members of the group feel comfortable with like adding their pronouns to their name tag on their screen.
Right.
So yeah, I think if I'm adamant about or intentional about introducing myself with my own pronouns, it helps others to feel comfortable being able to share their pronouns.
Right. Anything to weigh in there, Dr. James?
Just to echo what, Rebecca is saying, I think it's important to create a place of safety, because with therapy, where this group of individuals, they're going to be vulnerable, they're going to be pretty raw. So, being able to, respect where, people are coming from and like have that like acknowledgement, in that space, I think it's very, important, so people can share and be vulnerable with what they're experiencing at any given moment. So
I'm going to shift it to, how can the regular lay person or the person who is not a counselor, who might be listening to this podcast, support and help women who are in need of counseling or are struggling? What are some tips that you can give to people to be on the awareness or on the lookout that someone might need to seek some mental health counseling?
Yeah, I mean, I think, definitely to, and I'm going to go the route with like moms, like new moms, pregnant moms, like ask her how she's doing. I feel like that is a piece that tends to be, missing. Of course, women have to go to their appointments and, like follow up with the doctors when they're, pregnant. Not so much, during their postpartum period. But it's important for someone to be inquiring, like the focus is on the baby, of course, it's the newborn and everything, but it's important to get a sense of how she is doing.
Yeah, because I see or hear, certain people say, you know what, I was going through this for 2 years and I didn't even recognize that I was going through it. And then all of a sudden, I go see somebody and I have this aha moment that I've been in this depression. So there must be things that are signs that people should be unaware or be on the lookout for with regards.
Yeah. So ask it. And other things, just, you may notice some things in terms of their behaviors may be a little like different or off, in terms of kind of how this person to be, if they're like sleeping more, like eating more, or isolating or withdrawing, there's certain like signs and things that you may like pick up on, if they're not like bonding or connecting with their baby, you may want to like inquire about those things and get a sense of what may be happening, with that particular mom, dad, caregiver.
Right. And I can imagine that women who are adamant about breastfeeding their children, and then the children doesn't take to the breastfeeding, that they're going through some things there as well. Have you experienced something along those lines, and what has that been like?
Oh, yes, absolutely. A lot of women who like had this expectation and fantasy that they would be breastfeeding, their child for a year and beyond until the child is ready to wean. But that's just not the reality,
right,
of their situation and the grief and loss that comes with that. Having that like experience of their child either not latching on well or not producing enough milk, and now having to supplement to formula or go to formula, and just all the emotions that are surrounded with that can lead to, someone being very depressed.
Right. So that's helpful in terms of normalizing for people that these things happen, and that you're not in an isolated situation, and that doesn't make you a bad mom because
Exactly.
things are not necessarily coming to fruition. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts, Dr. Estrada?
I just want to echo what Shari mentioned, and that also, like in that instance, it's very important to get support there, even if it's not therapy. There's a ton of like Facebook groups of women who are in the like breastfeeding process, or even like exclusively pumping, and then just to know that like you're not alone in that boat, and that I think the difficult part about breastfeeding is that like stress impacts it, and so if you're not able to produce enough, your stress goes up, your supply goes down, and then there's all this mom guilt and shame. And then we also kind of have this misperception, I think, too, of like we see like, oh, like all women breastfeed, and this is what, here's me like happy breastfeeding, and that's really not how it is.
Right.
I think that, and so being able to be, like I said, in a community, like reaching out to other new moms, even like in Facebook groups or other types of groups like that, just to know like other people experience this and you're not alone. I think that does huge help for the mental health.
Great.
Absolutely.
That's great. And so it's important, no matter what. I think the lesson that I'm picking up here is, if you feel something, if you see something, check it out, do something about it. Don't just sit on it thinking that, oh, it'll go away, and or things along those lines. Very nice.
Yeah.
So what other thoughts do you all have? We're coming up on about 8 minutes left to kind of communicate, but what are some of the things that you feel are important for maybe the listener to know about? Maybe there's something that you want to share about CAPS or about your services, Dr. James.
I will just want to add that, like it's a very difficult situation being in a pandemic and having a new baby. And so we're not in the position to be having like lots of visitors over, and like we want to protect our baby from, potential COVID exposure because we're not sure.
Right.
And then also, new moms are probably not going outside of their house for a very long time. I can speak out of experience for that. So even if you don't notice something happening, just reach out to your new mom friends and just see if they're okay. I think that would be really just nice to hear another human being, an adult, talk to you. And then as far as CAPS goes, we are always, I think it may feel like, oh, it's just college counseling, like we won't know how to deal with those issues, but I think there's a lot of different therapists at CAPS with a lot of different expertise. And so if you're feeling that way, if you're feeling like you just need support in any way and you want to check out CAPS, please just come and call. Even if you want to just sit with us for an hour, we do offer those types of services. So just come in and check us out, and even just to kind of get some support.
I think the beauty of that is that people need to recognize that a university community is really a microcosm of the world, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
every single type of individual or experience here on our campus. And so why not, if you would seek counseling outside of the university experience, why would you not experience it within as well?
Right. And it's free. You're already paying student fees for it. So you might as well take advantage while you're here as a student. So
excellent. I appreciate that. How about you, Dr. James? Any last minute words of wisdom?
So just wanted to tag on a little bit to what, Rebecca said, in that, if you have a new mom, a woman who's pregnant in your life, just, ask how she's doing, how things are going. So important, especially during this time in a pandemic when, you're already isolated, and, being pregnant and being a new mom, makes you even more isolated. So you really want to like check in and see, you know, how they're doing. And there are a lot of resources out there too. There are a lot of groups, you know, I do want to plug a little bit, Postpartum Support International, which is a nonprofit organization that is known internationally. And they train providers, they provide resources and information, and they also provide a lot of groups. Okay. So groups for, you know, new moms, groups for moms who've had like NICU experience, you know, for African American moms, like, you know, Asian. So it is very like vast, and you can pretty find a group for your experience, you know, as a pregnant or new mom. Mm-hmm. So just wanted to kind of put that out there, that there is support and there are groups out there virtually, so that you don't have to feel so alone in your experience. Nice. So
I appreciate that. Well, I truly appreciate the two of you for coming and being a part of this experience. This hour has kind of flown by. I was looking down, I was like, okay, I got a half hour left. And then I looked down, I said, I got 5 minutes left. All right, so you all have, you know, done your profession very proudly today. And so I appreciate just your wisdom, your advice, you gave some sage advice in terms of what we can do. And I'm glad that you were able to answer the tough questions I put out there for you. Put you on the spot. I didn't think about that. I asked that question, but I don't think about that myself. Okay, we get you. We understand. That's part of I guess that's a part of our role as counselors sometimes, right? But we can't take ourselves too seriously at the same time. But I thank you so much. I wish you great success. You, Dr. Estrada, raising that child, and her being 10 months old, that's phenomenal. It goes by quick.
Yeah.
It goes by so quick, so enjoy every moment of it.
I will.
James, thank you so much. It was a great pleasure meeting you, and I think that our paths crossed when you were here at UCF, but I'm hoping that things are happening phenomenally for you and your new profession or your new outlook that you're doing right now. We're always welcome you back to UCF if you decide that that's something that you want to do. But I really appreciate you. This Friday, we're going to be doing a show. It's close to our last show for the year, I believe, and it's going to be on women in STEM. I have some of the great college professors who are in different disciplines on campus who are going to come and kind of communicate with me. Dr. Wisniewski, Dr. Bridge, and Dr. Ramavad are going to come and share what it's like for women to be in the STEM field. And, in a very real sense, you all are part of the STEM field because it's really, I would put counseling in that realm as well in some regards. So it's part of the humanities, I guess, or something along those lines. So anyway, but thank you all so much for being here. I want to
thank you.
UCF Foundation Office supports us in making sure that we can have this podcast and help broadcast this podcast. But you all have been great, and I will look forward to bringing you back again and hearing some more. Okay?
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, no worries. I appreciate you. Stay safe.
We are all clear. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.